Hi, everybody. In fact, I guess the only one who's here is Shane. Hi, Shane. Okay, anyway, I'm going to share for a few minutes to Facebook, see if I can't catch a few people. But as you know, this is an impromptu live stream. And when you do impromptu live streams, you often do find that you've only got a few folks coming around. However, I'll make the best of it. The video will be here for people thereafter. Do find Thank you, Shane. Okay, that should be enough. I'm going to start. Hi, everybody. This is an impromptu live stream. I have some news about the protest against the Netflix smear led by KRTDMedia and Shane Coughlin. And so let's begin with a few announcements. Let me share the screen. So here's a press release from earlier today at 1646, which at that time superseded all prior press releases dated today. Okay, New York, New York, on Tuesday, October 26, 2021 at 12 p.m. EST. Shane Coughlin, president of KRTDMedia, will lead the Netflix smear of Julian Assange protest outside the New York Netflix headquarters, located at 245 West 17th Street, New York, New York, 1011-5300, United States. The protest will feature in-person speakers and recorded statements. Speakers include Sharif Snuggs, who was the lead organizer for the Medicare for All marches on July 24th. Of course, he was joined by a lot of others later, most prominently by Savage Joy Man. And there's Josanna Vaz, who is with Fred Hampton leftists. And third speaker is New York City Council District 22 candidate, Edwin DeJesus. And finally, Ramona Masacci is the fourth speaker. The protest is being held in response to Netflix's obvious bias in promoting a government-led persecution. This documentary is designed to shift public sentiments against Assange, who stands trial on October 26th to 27th, after being granted his extradition hearing on January 4th, 2021, but is still in prison. But Netflix is ignoring the fact that key witnesses have admitted to lying about their testimony and the inhumane prison conditions and solitary confinement Julian Assange is currently being tortured with and will continue to be until something changes. The organizers and attendees of the protest ultimately demand that Netflix pull the content until at least after the trial has concluded, given that President Obama, former President Obama, Barack Obama, has close connections and several commercial deals with Netflix, and Susan Rice is a board member of Netflix. That makes the timing of the release of this content political, further proving that the trial and prosecution is for revenge and political purposes to keep someone who exposed U.S. war crimes silent and in prison. Netflix is now complicit in this persecution. For further details, call KRTDMedia at area code 929-340-7079 or email scoughlin@krtdmediagroup.com. Now, an update has to be added to this press release, and that update is due to the expectation of a nor'easter hitting New York tomorrow and being present at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The event has been moved to November 2nd, 2021 at 12 p.m. In other words, the Tuesday after tomorrow. So it's been postponed for 1 week due to the unpredictable weather that will be hitting the city. That weather starts tonight and is expected to be there until Wednesday morning. So once again, the event has been postponed by about a week. So I want to now share some news. Hi, Lisa Theobald. Nice to see you here. Let me share the screen and get you a little bit of news that just hit today. This news is from Amnesty International. Okay, Amnesty International, a picture of Julian Assange there. US/UK, quote, drop the charges, stop the extradition, and free Julian Assange, unquote, says Amnesty head. But just ahead of an appeal hearing against the decision by UK court not to extradite Julian Assange to the USA, Amnesty International Secretary General has called on U.S. authorities to drop the charges against him and the UK authorities not to extradite him but release him immediately. The call by Agnes Kalamar follows an investigation by Yahoo News revealing that U.S. security services considered kidnapping or killing Julian Assange when he was resident in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. These reports further weaken already unreliable U.S. diplomatic assurances that Assange will not be placed in conditions that could amount to ill treatment if extradited. Quote, assurances by the U.S. government that they would not put Julian Assange in a maximum security prison or subject him to abusive special administrative measures were discredited by their admission that they reserve the right to reverse those guarantees. Now, reports that the CIA considered kidnapping or killing Assange have cast even more doubt on the reliability of U.S. promises and further exposed the political motivation behind this case, unquote, said Amnesty Secretary General Agnes Callamard. Quote, it is a damning indictment that nearly 20 years on, virtually no one responsible for alleged U.S. war crimes committed in the course of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars has been held accountable, let alone prosecuted, and yet a publisher who exposed such crimes is potentially facing a lifetime in jail. The appeal hearing, scheduled for October 27th to 28th, that's Wednesday and Thursday, this Wednesday and Thursday, is expected to consider 5 grounds of appeal by the United States, including the reliability of assurances offered by the U.S. after a lower UK court ruled against Assange's extradition January of 2021. Amnesty International has concluded that the assurances are unreliable. The U.S. charges allege that Assange conspired with a whistleblower, Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, to legally obtain classified information. They wanted to stand trial on charges under the Espionage Act and the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act in the United States, where he could face a prison sentence of up to 175 years. The U.S. government's indictment poses a grave threat to press freedom, both in the United States and abroad. The conduct it describes includes professional activities undertaken by investigative journalists and publishers on a daily basis. Were Julian Assange's extradition to be allowed, it would criminalize common journalistic practices and permit the United States and other countries to target publishers and journalists outside their jurisdictions for exposing governmental wrongdoing. Can everybody see how dangerous that is? How dangerous that is. Reporters in this country who expose inconvenient truths about Saudi Arabia could be extradited to Saudi Arabia to stand a trial. The journalists who exposed inconvenient truths about the Indian government could be extradited to India to stand a trial, or extradited to Russia. Perhaps these things are unlikely to happen with respect to Russia, or India, because the United States' relationship with them is not so close. But how about reporters who exposed atrocities in Colombia by the reigning government there? What if the Colombian government were to try to extradite those reporters here? Since the Colombian government is backed by the U.S. government and by the U.S. intelligence agencies, it's quite likely that in situations like this, the United States might allow the journalists to be extradited to Colombia where those journalists could be tortured and subjected to a show trial. There are many nations in the world which the U.S. is allied with, where journalists who write inconvenient things might be subjected to consequences of that kind. The U.S., quote, the U.S. government's unrelenting pursuit of Julian Assange makes it clear this prosecution is a punitive measure, but the case involves concerns which go far beyond the fate of one man and put media freedom and freedom of expression in peril, unquote, said the Kalamar. Quote, journalists and publishers are of vital importance in scrutinizing governments, exposing their misdeeds, and holding perpetrators of human rights violations to account. This disingenuous appeal should be denied. The charges should be dropped, and Julian Assange should be released. And some background, the U.S. extradition request is based on charges directly related to the publication of leaked classified documents as part of Julian Assange's work with WikiLeaks. Publishing information that is in the public interest is a cornerstone of media freedom and the public's right to information about government wrongdoing. Publishing information in the public interest is protected under international human rights law and should not be criminalized. If extradited to the U.S., Julian Assange could face trial on charges under the Espionage Act and under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. He would also face a real risk of serious human rights violations due to detention conditions that could amount to torture or other ill treatment, including prolonged solitary confinement. Julian Assange is the first publisher to face charges under the Espionage Act. So, I thought that would be good to share with you.
Yeah.
You can see the danger, of course. You can see the problems. Okay, I now want to go to where I stand with respect to Julian Assange and my reasoning for that. As many of you know, we no longer have a democracy in the U.S. Instead, we have an oligarchy with a democratic facade, including a press whose mainstream is closely managed by the oligarchy that collectively owns all its major outlets. In that mainstream, there are certain things reporters and columnists can cover, and certain things that they cannot and must not say, on pain of losing the often very substantial incomes that hold their families hostage with chains of gold. The mainstream press insists that it is still free, but when the federal government uses its political and economic power over its allies, international allies in this case, to imprison a publisher named Julian Assange for a decade, as a consequence of their seeking to seize him and return him to the United States for a political show trial under a law that will prevent him from defending himself by explaining why he did what he did to a jury of his peers. That press is largely silent, except to smear that publisher about his imagined character flaws, vanity, egoism, even personal hygiene, and other problems having nothing to do with the issues at hand, which are: 1, do governments having constitutions that guarantee freedom of the press have the right to use their power to persecute, prosecute, and imprison publishers for the content they choose to publish. No! These activities violate freedom of the press and the right of the people to know what their government is doing in their name when they do so. They commit a crime against democracy, a crime we in this country have allowed to go on for more than a decade now, that we must no longer observe and tolerate from afar without answer and punishment. In pursuing Assange in this way, this government is violating his human rights, is committing a human rights crime. Its leaders and those in its intelligence services need to be brought up on international charges. 2, do such governments have the right to undermine their own democracies and the ideal of a single system of law for everyone through these actions by deterring or preventing publishers from providing the people information about domestic criminal acts, international crimes against humanity, and war crimes against foreign populations on grounds that publication of these crimes will damage national security? No. National security in a democracy is about protecting that democracy, its constitution and its laws, first and above all, not just protecting its physical security or protecting the political interests of the executive currently occupying the White House. Hiding crimes by officials of the state is corrosive for that democracy. 2 or more standards of law is corrosive for that democracy. Intimidating the press by persecuting, prosecuting, jailing, or executing publishers like Julian Assange and reporters over the content of what they published or reported does not protect democracy. It corrodes it. Charging them with espionage to punish them for content they published is an activity that, practiced intensely enough for long enough, will destroy democracy by freezing the activities of the no longer free press. These acts by the United States government must stop, or there will no longer be a chance to end oligarchy and create the democracy we deserve and need. So Julian Assange's fight is the fight of every one of us. It is our fight against the darkness of oligarchy and emerging fascism. Stop the smears of Assange. Stop the attempts to prosecute him for publishing. Stop the attempts to extradite him. Stop the disrespect for democracy and the American people. You, President Biden, lead under the Constitution, and you are sworn to uphold it. Stop shredding it. Free Assange. So that's my say. And that's my reasoning. I'm really serious about that. Our democracy has been in danger now for a very long time. It continues to be in danger. More and more of our rights under the First Amendment are being compromised, and gradually taken away. We cannot allow this to continue to happen. Our rights of free speech and free assembly are severely compromised in almost any city in the country when we wish to protest. Free speech and freedom of assembly are also constitutional rights. As long as the exercise of those rights is peaceful. We all know that in every major city of the country, we have police coming out acting as provocateurs to try to get peaceful protests out of control and to arrest people and place them in jail and deter further exercise of everybody's constitutional rights. We have the government using tactics of terror against free expressions by journalists. That, coupled with the oligarchy's control of the mainstream press, means that our free press is nearly gone and that it is dependent on the alternative media of the kind you see here to keep going. Julian Assange, okay, and the WikiLeaks were and are perhaps the epitome of alternative free media. They were the ones who were frightening government officials by developing the capability to police the secrets of the government that were beyond the law and expose those secrets to the public so the public could discuss them, could debate them, and could decide whether they wanted to continue those practices within what is supposed to be a free democracy. I see a number of comments here. And they're mostly about hellos. Melissa saying it's out of anyone's control. It certainly is, Lisa. It's out, okay, of anyone's control. Are there any more comments? If there are not, then I will say good night and keep this one relatively short. Everybody, good night, and thanks for coming. I know there was no warning and no promotion, okay, as there usually is. But the video is here, my news is here, and my say is here as well. So enjoy yourselves. I'll be back tomorrow night. Let me see who I have on tomorrow night for you. If you can wait for a moment. Tomorrow night, I am having author Michael Albert on. He is the author of a book called No Bosses. I think you'll find that book to be very, very interesting. It's about alternative forms of business organization where there are no bosses. So I hope you'll come to that one. It is not a Red Beret stream, but we will have other Red Beret streams this week. On October 28th, Sharif Snuggs is going to be with us. With Edwin from New York City, we'll be discussing the Day of the Dead again. And on October 30th, Stephanie Gallardo will be coming back, I believe. Or at least that's what I have on my schedule now. I have to double check that. And November 2nd, Kyle Davis, from Massachusetts, a state-level single-payer advocate, will be coming on again. So those are the coming attractions. Hopefully, I'll see you tomorrow night, which I think is going to be a very exciting show. Thank you again for coming. Who is the author again? His name is Michael Albert. When is the new date for the protest? November 2nd at 12 noon. Yes, it was an impromptu going live, Lana. Nobody knew I was going live until I scheduled the YouTube, which was only a few minutes before I went on. I scheduled the YouTube, and I see there's no one from Facebook here, which means that no one. Oh, the KRTDMedia Shane was here. He was the only one on Facebook. Everyone else is from YouTube. So there we go. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night. Like Prince Albert. Got it. Laugh out loud. Yeah, like Prince Albert.